Alright, now let's get to drawing the architectural levels. But before we get to that, I'm going to first tell you a few little points. First, I'm going to delete this right here, and then go into an elevation. As you can see here, once again, we've got two default levels, for which we could simply go over here to the AutoCAD plan, and then first take a look at the other levels we have, as well as their offsets and how many they are. And then we're going to go back to Revit and then start drawing them. Okay, so those levels would be the FFLs, which are actually the architectural finished floor levels. So first we're going to draw them, and then we will get to drawing the walls, doors, and windows, etc. But first, here's a point. Imagine that I have already drawn the finished floor levels, as in let's say that we've already got the FFLs here. Then I would naturally begin with drawing the walls, as usually the modeling of the architectural begins with the walls. So let's say that I'm going to be drawing the walls after the FFLs. But actually, here's a question for you. Do you know which level the main or basic walls start from? Like, from which spot or FFL should we start drawing the walls? Do they start from an FFL? As in, do they begin from the architectural floor? Definitely not. We need to draw the basic walls from the slab, which is at the TOS offset. But as you can see over here, we don't have a TOS, and all we've got are the FFLs. So how should we draw the walls? The feet of the wall need to sit on the TOS and not on the FFL. So what should we do now? You might think to yourself that it's actually pretty simple, and for drawing the walls, you could just select the wall command, then choose a negative offset by, for example, 10 centimeters, which is the difference between the structural and architectural in this plan, and that makes the wall start from the TOS. But even though doing so would actually adjust the elevation of your walls, it's not technically right to do. You see, we usually try our best to not give any random base offsets or top offsets to our items in the projects. In other words, we try not to use any base offsets or top offsets unless it's very necessary. The reason for that is it may cause some trouble if you're working on a big project, because when you try to use a negative base offset, so that, for example, these walls that you're drawing, they would be starting from the TOS. And now let's imagine that for whatever reason, the offset of your walls change. For example, let's say that it is 3, but then changes to 2.80. Okay, so what should you do in that case? The offset is already required to change. After that, you would have to select all of the structural base walls that you've drawn, and then go to their base offset value, which you can find the parameter here, and then change the value by however amount that it is needed. That actually isn't a very ideal thing to do, and you should never really do that on your projects, especially when you're working on the bigger ones, because like I said, it's not technically right to do. I actually even tell that to my students in the classes, that maybe in Revit you might have to close your project, or just finish modeling it and then close Revit. What matters after that is the methods that you use to model the items, and how you finish that project. Because in Revit, you could use any way to draw anything. For example, here we just said how we could draw the different offsets, and we also said we could go over here to modify the offset. But that's not right, even though it might work for you, and you might even use that same way to modify your level offsets. On the outside, it might seem that it's accurate, but it's actually not, and you should never do it. So try not to focus all your attention on just modeling your project however possible, just to have something to offer. You need to do the right things to draw your items the right ways, either by the accurate common ways, or ways that can help you speed up your process. Because for example, if you try to use this base offset way, and then if the base offset is required to change, then you'd have to select all your walls one by using filters, or if it's a title block you can select it, just do it however, which will then once again even include some inaccurate items in your selection, and then you would have to change the base offset of those selected items. But doing so in big projects, for example like this one, for which you can see the structural plan here, that would be very time consuming, and it just doesn't make sense to go that way. So we're gonna put that way aside. We shouldn't go that way, so we won't. What can we do instead? Now you might think that, okay, I'm not going to alter the base offset, but I am going to draw a level. I could just go into an elevation and draw the TOS levels, and not only the TOS ones, but also the FFLs. Then I could have the structural walls start from the TOS and make TOS the base of the walls. And as for the other elements like the finished walls or the architectural floors, as well as even the furniture or anything else, then I would just work with the FFLs. I've got 2 of them over here and I could use them. Now you are thinking right, but it's still not very accurate to do. So despite all of that, it's still not the most accurate way. Now why is that? Once again, it's because of the alteration process. You see, if the offsets of your structural levels are required to change for installation and structural reasons, then what should you do? You would have to first go over to your structural plan and change the levels offsets there, and then you'll have to do that again in the architectural file as well. As in, then you would have to change the offsets in 2 separate files. First in the structural, which would be this file over here, and then once again you'd have to go to the architectural file to change the offsets. Once again, I would say that would be very time consuming. So now let's see what we actually should do. The right thing to do is that you create a monitored copy of your structures. That means that you would have to link your structural plan into the architectural and then copy monitor its levels. Now, if you're not very familiar with copy monitor and how you can do it and how it works, I'm going to also be giving you some explanations while I do it so that you could also learn. But in general terms, what this copy monitor command does is that it copies the structural levels into architectural while also maintaining a connection between the original levels and the copied ones. For example, then if I go over here and then change the offset of one of the levels, then if I go over to the architectural file, I would be notified that, for example, this level's offset has changed in the structural. This structural level that you have copy monitored, its offset has changed. Do you want to update that change of offset in here as well? So this way there would still be a connection between these copied items and the items that you've copied from. This connection between the items is actually constant, and if you make any changes to the items in the structural, if they're copy monitored in architectural, then you would be notified that there have been some changes made to this item that you've copy monitored. Do you want to apply and adapt those changes here? Or not, you could just ignore it. For example, let's say that those changes were made by mistake. Or maybe that change was for testing something. So then in the architectural, it would be up to you to choose whether you want to apply those changes or just ignore them. So do you see how useful this command is? This way, even if you don't have access to the structural plan and someone makes some changes there, or more specifically changes the offset of one of the levels, then you will be notified here that this change has happened. And that's actually very important. So we conclude that the best way to do that is that you copy monitor your levels. Now let's see how we can do it. The first step of the way is that you need to link the plan that you need into your architectural. So right now I need the structural plans levels to use here. So first I'm going to link the structural plan. Now here's the thing about linking plans. You're probably already familiar with linking and this link Revit command, which links a different file into the file that you have at hand. But as for this project over here, we need the 0 points of both files to be the same spot, and basically we need that 0 point for both the structural and the architectural file to be the same. This way they would lay on top of one another, and basically in all projects the 0 points of both files need to be aligned. For example, the 0 point of the structural and the 0 point of the architectural need to be adapted to one another, so that when you link them, they would overlay each other and not mispositioned. Even if they're not, you could later try to align the files together by using the axis, grids, and stuff like that. But the point is that the 0 points need to be the same. Okay, so how do I do that for these files? Here's what I'm going to do. First, I'm going to go over here and try to insert one of these architectural levels into one of Revit's architectural plans. The level in which we need to draw most of the things is the ground level, which happens to include a lot of the things that I'm going to be telling you, and we're going to be working mostly on this level for draw in the walls, doors, windows, staircases, and every other item it needs. And then for some other things, we might need to focus on the other levels to gather more complete information. So since we're planning to work on the ground level, I'm going to try to insert this ground level into Revit. Let me separate it from its sheet, then Control C. Then I'm going to go over here and hit Control V. Okay, now I'm going to try to explode it several times, so that if there are any blocks over here, they wouldn't bother me in Revit. And also I'm going to adjust its 0 point. Now, what was the 0 point that we chose? It was in fact the intersection of the first two grids. So that would be the intersection of this grid with this grid. Am I right? This intersection is our spot. Now I'm going to head to the architectural file to show you something. As you can see in the lower levels, like the basement ones, there are columns on these grids, but then when we go up to the ground level, those columns are kind of gone. And then for the intersection of the grids, we could take the intersection of B and 2. That's in case if we want to start from here. But since in the structural we've already assigned A and 1's intersection as the 0 point, you would need to do the same thing here. So I'm going to go over to this plan and select the whole thing. Then press move, and then I'm going to take the intersection of these two grids over here, which is this spot, and then in this field I'm going to type 0, 0. Now it's moved over here. Now also I'm going to double check its unit, even though we do know that the units are both the same. So I'm going to measure a distance here, for example the stair step, measure from here to here, which gives us 0.3. So we figured that this is in meters. Now let's save it. In this folder over here, DWG to Revit. And then for the name of this file, I'm going to, for example, write ground floor. Let's also add arc at the end and save. Okay, now that we've saved the file, we're going to go over here and import the plan. I am aware that the levels aren't adjusted yet, but for now I'm just trying to align the 0 points. So I'm going to go over here, import cat, then I'm going to find that file. And in the settings, I'm going to keep it on current view only to import it only here. Import units was meter. And for the positioning, I'm going to keep it on origin to internal origin. This one also helps to make the 0 points to be the intersection of those two grids that I told you. So now we import it. Now you see in Revit's newest version, the intersection of these two reference planes that you see over here actually makes for the 0 point of your project. Do you see the reference planes here? You can see that the intersection of them is right on the intersection of the grids that we chose. Alright, now I have imported my CAD plan. So next I'm going to go over here, select Link Revit, and I'm going to also link the structural plan. For example, this file over here is the one that we worked on and drew one of its levels. Now down here for its positioning, I'm going to select internal origin to internal origin, and then I'm going to click open. So now you see that our structural plan has been linked, and you might also notice that it's been positioned right onto that CAD file that we imported earlier. So basically I have imported one CAD plan from AutoCAD. Then for its positioning, I selected origin to internal origin. Now also the intersection of those two grids was the 0 point, which was what we needed to be. So now when I link the structural plan into architectural, and then once again for the positioning, I select internal origin to internal origin, then those intersections would fall upon each other, just like what you can see over here, and then you can easily continue. So that's about how you can align your file 0 points together. Now as for that full structural plan, which I'm planning to link to use over here, has a different 0 point. That file's 0 point is the intersection of two other grids. And actually, let's just go and take a look at it. So I'm going to go over here and open the structural plan. And now, do you see these symbols over here? This is actually the project base point and survey point. currently it is positioned on the intersection of grid 12 and grid 1. So this project's 0 point is at 12 and 1's intersection. Now you might think to yourself that we could just reposition these 0 points, as in I could move this base point over to this intersection over here and then link the plan, which actually is something that you can do. But if you try that and then go to link the plan, for example over here, if you select it, then you shouldn't position your plan at internal origin to internal origin. Instead, you could choose project base point to project base point, which would place both of the project's base points on top of one another. For example, I'm going to go over here, over to the structural file, then select this project base point. But also remember that if you couldn't see it, you could just press VG and then expand the site category, then check the project base point and survey point. So then you could go over here and select the project base point and then select move and try to move it from there up to the intersection over here. Remember that moving the project base point and survey point is actually a little risky, so remember that in some cases you should not do that at all. And the reason why I'm doing it right now is to show you that it's possible and how it is done. Now I'm going to also synchronize it, and then I'm going to link this plan into the architectural. We're going to go over here, link Revit, then select the structural plan, and also we're going to open the positioning drop down, then select project base point to project base point, and then click OK. This message isn't really that important. And so as you can see over here, once again the 0 points are aligned. So this is also another way of doing it. Or you could also go back to your main CAD file, then change the 0 point to the intersection of 12 and 1, or wherever else. So those were the two ways of aligning the 0 points. Now we're going to move on to save time. Okay, so I have linked the structural plan. And now if I go over to an elevation, for example, let's open this one. Here you can see that we have the structural levels. These are the structural levels from the link. Now I'm going to go over here to remove the scope box. Not to mention that the problem we have with this new 2025 version is that all views have scope boxes. Okay, so like I said, here we have the structural levels. And if you remember, we also said that you could copy monitor some items from the structural plan, which again, as we said, creates a connection between the main item that you're copying from and what you've copied from it in a different file. The connection between those main items or elements and their copy monitored version is constant. And if any changes are made into the structural plan, you will be given the choice to apply those changes into architectural or not. So let's go copy monitor. You're going to go over to the Collaborate tab and then find an option here called Copy Monitor. If you click to open its drop-down, you will see two options. First one is Use Current Project, which we're going to skip, and the other is Select Link, which is for when we want to copy some elements from a link. So if we click Select Link, then we would have to click to pick that link. So I'm going to click here, and then the link is selected. Once you do that, a new tab will be added here called Copy/Monitor. Once you're in this tab, you could go over here and click on Copy, and then you're going to go over here and click on the levels. So you see when I click on this one, it's going to copy this level into the architectural. Let's wait for the process to finish. And then this is what you will have. Let me go copy another one, for example this level. Click, and it'll be copied. Now to select and copy multiple levels, first we're going to have to check this multiple box, and then drag over the rest of the levels. Then go over to the filter, and only check the levels, then click OK. Let's double check. Only keep the levels selected, and then first we're going to have to click on the Finish button over here, and then the Finish green check mark, meaning that when you're using multiple copy, after you have selected the levels that you want, then you'd have to click on Finish here to copy them first. Okay, so our levels have been copy monitored. So I'm going to click on Finish, And now let's see how we can check the levels. It's pretty easy. We're going to go over here and hide the link temporarily. And now you can see the levels have been created. Let's also go over here to enable heads for them. And so now these will make for the TOS levels, which have been copy monitored from the structural plan into the architectural. Also, when you select them, you can see these symbols on top of them, and these symbols indicate that the selected elements are copy monitored and they are connected to another file. So if any changes are made to that main file, you will also be notified here. So now I can go ahead and add the levels. I'm going to go over here to New Structural Plan, and then I'm going to select all of the levels that I've copy monitored and add them to the project. Let's go here to the subdiscipline, and here they are now. So you could very easily copy monitor your levels from structural to your architectural plans in order for them to also be constantly connected, and in case there's a change in offset in the structural plan, then you wouldn't need to worry. You could also apply those changes into architectural because Revit will notify you and give you the choice. So there goes the copy monitoring. Now you could use that command for your levels as well as for your grids. That way you wouldn't need to draw all of your grids one by one. Instead, you could just copy monitor them. For example, I'm going to go over to this view in which I've imported the CAD file. And here we have two options. We could either use pickline to draw every single grid one by one, or we could just use the copy monitor command instead. Now, how do we use copy monitor? Once again, we would have to go over to the Collaborate tab, drop down Copy Monitor, then select Link, then click to select the link you have, click Copy with the multiple box checked, then drag over your entire plan, then go over to the filter and only check the box for the grids. Now we're going to click on the Finish button here first to copy monitor the grids. And once the process is done, we're going to go to this tab again, then click on the Finish green check mark. Now, if we once again try to hide the structural link, then you can see that the grids have also been copied into our file. So you could very easily use the Copy Monitor command to copy all of your grids and levels. Also, you could draw your grids manually if there aren't too many of them, but as for the levels, it is best that you use Copy Monitor to make them connected to the levels that you have in the structural. But again, you could use that command for copying the grids to make the process move on faster. Now, I want to also tell you an important point. You see, we've come this far and copy monitored some items, and by the end, we link all of our files together. So now imagine that we have the structural link here as well. Now you see, if I try to make some changes to the structural grids, you can still see the grids from the structural file under them. That also applies to the copied levels. For example, if I go over here and try to extend the levels in the structural file, and then also unhide the structural link, you can see that we still have the levels from the structural link in the view. Now, this may cause some trouble when you are trying to draw some things in your plans, and basically these levels shouldn't be visible in the structural file. Neither should the grids. They should only be visible in the architectural. Now, how can we do that? Pay close attention to what I'm about to tell you. If you are using a central file, as in if your file is central, that would make your work a lot easier, because then you could very easily go over to turning off the work set that contains these levels and grids in the structural file and make the work set invisible in the architectural. So how can we do that? We're going to have to go over here, then select our link, right-click on it, and then select Manage Work Sets. Now over here you can see the work sets that you have for the structural link. And now what I'm about to do is I'm going to turn off the grids and levels work sets. I just want to make them invisible. How do we turn it off? First, we're going to have to select the work set like this, then go to the right side of the window and select Close. Now you can see Opened has changed to No, and if I click Open again, it'll be Yes, and Close makes it No. Now we're going to reload it. I'm going to click OK for this, And now, as you can see, we no longer see these structural levels. All we've got are the architectural ones. Now, you might also wonder why this one doesn't appear. And the reason for that is because these levels, or the offset lines, were not in the offset that we just closed. They're in a different one. Now, let's also go take a look at the structural plan. And as you can see here, we no longer see the grids. So that's how it works. You can very easily make them invisible. Also, if you notice that you have missed some things, then that's because those items were definitely not inside the workset that you've closed. You're gonna have to go over here and open the structural file and check to see what the problem was that doesn't make these items show. It's either because of their worksets, or maybe they're part of the waffle links here, and stuff like that. Now let's go check this out together. And here we are. So you see the levels that we can see on this part in the architectural file. Let's go check their workset. It's workset 1. So I'm going to change that workset to what I've closed. And then I'm going to synchronize this file to also apply these changes to the central file. And after that, I'm going to go over here and once again, I'm going to reload it. Let's go into an elevation where we can see that those levels that were visible here by mistake are no longer visible. So this way you could also control the visibility of some of your items. And also this is what we usually do for our projects in Revit. We just basically close the grids and levels worksets in the linked file, which also you just saw that the worksets can be separate. Now also you might wonder what you should do if your file isn't central. You might not even have any worksets to close. You see, if you haven't worked on the central file and haven't linked any files, then you won't have the Manage Worksets option in this window. Then you won't be able to open or close any worksets. So what should you do in that case is, like, if you don't have a central file, what can you do to make the grids and the levels invisible? That's actually very easy. You could just open the view and press VG, and then go over to the Revit Links tab. And then you're going to edit this and change it to custom. Then you're going to go into this tab and change this one to custom as well. And then you're going to uncheck the visibility for your grids. Alright, click OK and that'll turn off your grids in the plan. And you could also do that for your levels and elevations. Now you might think to yourself that this way you will have to go over to every single view and do that same thing over and over again. But here's a tip, you won't need to. You see, in all of our projects, we've got a view template. For example, for the measuring plans, we have one template and another template for the flooring and another template for the elevations. In fact, we have a separate template for each series of documents, which you could go into those templates and make your grids and levels invisible in there. That way you won't have to go into every single view, then to the Revit links to make the grids and levels invisible. And actually, I'm gonna give you a quick example to help you understand it better. So I'm gonna open a new project. And I'm just gonna draw a few random grids. Something like that. Okay, and also this file isn't central. So now I'm gonna save this. And for its name, I'm gonna put, for example, test. Now I'm gonna close this. Then I'm going to go over here and open a whole nother project. And I'm going to link that previous file into here. I'm going to select the test file and link it into the project. So you see, now we've got the grids. Also, our file isn't central. Like if I go over here and right click, the Manage Worksets is off. So now what am I going to do? I'm going to open VG, then go to Revit Links, then set this one to custom. Then also in the annotation tab, we're going to make the categories custom. And then we're going to look through the list to uncheck the visibility for the grids and turn them off like this. Now you might also wonder if you need to go into every single view and do the same thing over and over again, which, like I said, you wouldn't need to. You see, if you do that, for example, I just did it for this level 1 over here, But in level 2, we still have those grids. But you could very easily, you could right click on the first one, then create a view template from it. And then you could go over to that level 2 you have to apply that view template to it. We're going to discuss the view templates in full later in the sheet making chapter. But as you can see over here, once I applied it, the grids are gone. So in fact, I've applied the settings that I've adjusted in this view to this other one. I just made a view template from it and then applied it to another level. It's actually very easy, so don't worry if your file isn't central, because you can still manage your levels and grids. So now let's go begin drawing in Revit. First, I'm going to go into the ground floor, and we also have the CAD plan for it. But like I said, the one we have over here is not going to be of any use because of the contradictory details that we had. So right now we're going to have to create some profiles for the mullions, and we also said that the glass is supposed to be double glazed. So first I'm going to create a new curtain wall type. For example, I'm going to select this storefront, and then I'm going to duplicate it, and then give that duplicated one a new name. For example, I'll make it Kimia, followed by elevation, or we could also make it facade, indicating that this is for the exterior. It's not going to be any inner partitions. I'm going to also include the spacing between the mullions in the name, because if you remember, we said that we need a curtain wall for this side, where the spacing between the mullions is by 2 meters, making it one curtain wall type. And then we're going to need another curtain wall type for these sides, where the spacing is 4 meters. So we can't use just one type for all of these curtain walls. Instead, we're going to need two, one with mullion spacing of 2 meters and the other 4 meters. So let's go ahead and write that in the name as well. And let's say we're going to make this one 2 meters or 200 centimeters. Then click OK. For now, we're not going to make any adjustments in the settings. We're just trying to create the types, and then I'm going to have to make the type for the glass. And after that, I'm going to have to model the mullions. Now, what kind of family do we need to create for the glass? In other words, which part of the curtain wall do these glasses make? We refer to the glasses on the curtain walls as the curtain wall panels, and so curtain wall panel is going to be their category. So now we're going to have to make panels for these curtain walls. Therefore, we're going to go over here, New, Family. Then I'm going to go into the metric folder, and here it is, curtain wall panel. I'm going to open its template. And over here we could create those glass panels. First I'm going to go into one of the elevations, for example, exterior. And then I'm going to grab the extrusion tool, then draw a rectangle. And that makes it one glass panel. Then I'm going to go into the reference level view to adjust its thickness. One of the thicknesses was supposed to be 6 millimeters and the other 8. So here I'm going to put 6, and that makes one glaze. And then I'm going to copy it. Also make sure to uncheck constrain. And then this one is going to have to be 8 millimeters. So we put 8 mil. And now what about the distance between these two glasses? The distance between here to here is, let's head to the CAD plan to see how much it's supposed to be. We're going to measure the distance from here to here. Here it is around 2 centimeters. So now I'm going to change this value to 20. So then it's going to be something like this. Let me move this header out of the way. Then I'm going to make this one shorter, and then stretch it on this end. And now both of the glasses are equal. So this is the panel we need. So far we have created our glass panels. And now I'm going to also measure the distance between their outer sides, and it's supposed to be 34. So it's 34 millimeters long. And if you like, you could even include the decimal digits. For example, from here to here is this value, where you can see also there's a 5 at the end, which you could even include it if you like. In other words, you are free to make the distance between these two panels exactly like in the CAD plan. Like you could make this 0.205. Alright, and if you remeasure the distance between the outer sides, then you will have the value that is exactly like what you have in the CAD plan. So now we're finished with the double glazed glass. Let's also delete this. And then you could even go over here to lock these two so that they don't accidentally move. Let's also go double check in the exterior elevation. This is the first panel and this is the second one. Now as for their materials, I could go over here and select them both together. And then I'm going to define a parameter for their material so that I could edit it in the project space. For example, I'm going to name this parameter material and click OK, and also make sure that it is a type parameter. So we just defined a parameter for it that we can edit in the project. Let's go and save this family over in the families folder. I'm going to go over here to save it in this folder. Now as for the name of this family, we're going to make it curtain wall panel. Now it's also up to you if you want to give it a specific name, like you can make it 6mm glass and 8mm glass. For example, I'm going to also add a kimia at the beginning and make it kimia/elevation curtain panel. Let's also make this uppercase E. And instead of slash, I'm just going to put a hyphen. There we go. Now I'm going to save this. So far we have made our panel. And now if I click on load into project and then select the wall, go to edit type, then we could edit this type of curtain wall. And then for its curtain panel, I'm going to select what I've just made. It was kimia elevation curtain wall panel. So now let's see how it's going to look when drawn. You can see that for this family, this is how the glasses appear. Next, I'm going to have to create the mullions for it. If I press the tab key and select these panels, then I could go to edit type to also assign a material to them. For example, I could give them the glass material. So this way we've just saved ourselves from having to adjust the material in the family space. Instead, we're just going to look through this list and select a material like glass. This is merely for an example and we're going to readjust it later. So far we have made the panel, and now let's go and make the mullions for it. Now what kind of family do we need to make for the mullions? In other words, in which category do we find them? The mullions are in fact profiles, so we're going to have to open a profile template. So I'm going to look through this list where we can find a template which is called Profile Mullion. This is the template that we need to use and draw our mullion in. Now for this one, you could either go to the CAD plan and measure the dimensions of the mullion and then draw around it, or you could just import the CAD demonstration itself. You could just import the CAD plan into your template and then draw around it, which I think is the best thing to do. So I'm going to go over here and first I'm going to copy this mullion. It's actually a block right now, so I'm going to explode it and then I'm going to copy it. Now I'm going to paste it into a whole new file. And I'm just going to place it over here somewhere near the middle. Now I'm going to save this into this folder. And also I'm going to name it mullion. Alright. Now I'm going to go into Revit, and instead of drawing everything randomly, I'm just going to import the CAD. I'm going to go to this folder, select mullion, then select meter for unit, current view only, and color black and white. So it's going to look like this. Now here you could either explode your CAD file to make this into a group of lines, and so basically you would have your profile, only then you'll have to also split these spots and then trim the lines together. You see, in the version 2025 of Revit, this new feature has been added where you can draw profiles inside each other. The older versions didn't have this feature, but in this newest version, it has been added, and it's also very helpful. Alright, so now I'm going to take this mullion and move it to the center, right at the center of these reference planes. So far this mullion has the correct profile, and I could just load it into the project and use it. So let's also try it out. I'm going to save it first into the families folder, and then I'm going to name it kimia elevation mullion. Then I'm going to load it into project. And then in the ribbon, I'm going to select mullion. And then for example, I'm going to duplicate the selected type. Then I'm going to name it Kimia, elevation, mullion. Now I'm going to head to its profile and select the profile that we've just made. And there we go. Now you're going to also have to select the curtain wall and then go to edit type. And also remember that you could not assign a profile to this curtain wall at first. And the way that it goes is that first they're going to have to create a mullion and assign a profile to it. Then you could choose that mullion profile for your curtain wall, which you can see we have it in the drop down. So if I assign this family to all of the mullions, and also let's say we're not going to have any horizontals, then I'm going to click OK. And then this is how the mullion will look on the curtain wall. So now you can go ahead and draw your curtain walls like this. Now here we're going to also want to use the details that we were given for this plan. And you see it's going to look so much better that in your Phase 2 plans, your mullions don't look like this. Instead, it's going to have to look like what we have in this CAD plan. They need to have details just like in this details sheet because the details are very important in the plan. So we're going to want to apply these details to our mullions to make them look like this. Now, how do you suggest is better that we do this? Because we can't just manually draw some of the details. Actually, we could, but it's going to take a lot of time. We would just have to measure back and forth. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to copy this CAD drawing, copy it, and then paste in a new file. We're going to place it over here. Alright, now I'm going to save this as detail mullion. Okay, so then I'm going to go over to Revit. And then I'm going to open a detail item family template. And also remember, we're not going to import that CAD in here again. Instead, we're going to open a detail item family, going into the metric folder. And then I'm going to select this detail item template and open it. Then I'm going to import that CAD file in this one. I'm going to select that CAD file I made, then open it, and here it is. Then I'm going to explode it. After exploding that CAD drawing, it's going to look like this, and these will become the regions, and the rest will be all lines. So here's our mullion. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to load this into that mullion family we've made earlier. I'm going to load it in this family and put it here, then press the space bar to rotate it, and then I'm going to move it and place it over here. So now we've got the detailed mullion. So do you see how useful that profile feature is? You could very easily add the details from AutoCAD to your families, like how we just did. Now we're going to also grab this line and move it here. And then on the left side, we're going to grab this line and move it on the other one as well until they are fully aligned. So we're going to keep doing that, even for this side up here. And I'm going to also move this line. And now our mullion family is fully detailed. Not to mention that it's going to also look so much better in the plan. And now if I try to load this family into the project, do you see how much better the mullions look now? We've got all the details we need in the mullion family, and they've been placed on the curtain wall. Now, if you look closely, you'll notice that this glass isn't in the right place, and it's supposed to be here between the two regions. So now to fix this, we're going to have to first measure the length that needs to be filled, which is this value over here that I'm going to copy. And after that, we're going to select the mullion and give it an offset. As in, I'm going to go to edit type for the mullion, and then for its offset, I'm going to put that value. Now, as you can see, all of the mullions move up, and then the glasses will go exactly where they're supposed to. Alright, so far we have created our curtain wall, and now let's go to its edit type again, and readjust some further settings. Alright, so we have assigned the panel for it, and then for the grids, first we're going to have to turn off the horizontals, because we don't need them. And as for the vertical grids, we said that we needed for the distance between these mullions to be by 2 meters. So for the spacing, we're going to put 2. We've also assigned the mullion family that we've made, and we also make sure to turn off all of the horizontal mullions. That's it for the settings. Now I'm going to click OK, and then delete. And then this will be the curtain wall that we've made for this side of the exterior. Now let's start drawing the actual curtain wall on the plan, which I'm going to start from this end. And I'm going to drag it all the way to the right and stop right here. Alright? And now as you can see, the mullions don't seem to be placed on the link, and they're not coordinated with the CAD plan yet. In such cases, you're going to have to go over to the Properties palette and alter your curtain wall justification. For example, mine is right now on Beginning, so I'm going to change it to End, which doesn't seem to be doing quite what we need yet. Alright, so I'm going to change it to Center. And now you can see that once I set the justification on Center, all of the mullions have been placed exactly where they need to be. And now if you try to move them around, for example, if I move this a little to the right, you'll see that all of them will go exactly in the right places. So it's as easy as that. Now there goes the drawing of the curtain walls, and now we have one more thing to do, where we need to actually change the type of this curtain wall to add the curtain walls for the sides, as well as the corner mullions. These are the things that we're going to do in the next video, and then we will draw the rest of the curtain walls for the project. So now let's also try to add the mullions over here. You see what we have over here needs to be placed step by step and individually. And the reason for that is that you can't, for this type of mullion, assign certain mullion to one instance. This is something that you're going to have to do manually. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make the mullion, and then later we're going to talk about how we can place them. So I'm going to open another family profile. Then I'm going to go over here and open the profile mullion. And then I'm going to go through the same process that I went through for the previous mullion. First, I'm going to go over here and select this whole thing. Then I'm going to copy it. Then I'm going to paste it over here. Then I'm going to save it with the name Corner Mullion. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to import it. And there we go. So next I'm going to explode it. And then I'm going to adjust and align some of its lines. So then we will have something like this. Let's also place this one aside. And now this is the mullion that we could use. Next, let's also import its details. So I'm going to go over to AutoCAD. And then I'm going to copy this again. Then I'm going to paste it over here. And then save it with the name Detail Corner Mullion. And then once again, I'm going to open another detail item, paste it over there, and then I'm going to bring the detail item. So here we're going to import CAD. Then I'm going to select the detail corner mullion file, and we will have it here. Now I'm going to unpin it and then explode. And also I'm going to bring it down a little bit. And then I'm going to load this into that new family that I've opened earlier. And here we are, and now I'm going to rotate it a little bit to make it eccentric to that other one, and then I'm going to place it over it. We're going to place it approximately for now. Then I'm going to select Move, and then place this up here. And so now we have that corner mullion that we need. Alright. Now the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to save it as corner mullion. with also a kimia at the beginning. So that'll be kimia, corner, mullion. Then I'm going to load this into the project. Alright, now we could go over here and right click, select mullions, then on grid line. And then we could go over here to edit type. And the reason why it's not working right now is because this is pinned, so we're going to unpin it first. And then we're going to try to duplicate its type. And then for the name of the duplicated one, we're going to, for example, add corner. My caps lock is on, so I'm going to turn it off and write it again. Alright, now I'm going to go over to the profile, and then I'm going to select what I just made. And then we will have something like this. But also it is facing the wrong direction. So you're going to have to also adjust its angle. For example, if I go over to edit type again, and then change its angle from 0 to -45, it's going to rotate this way. It needs to rotate one more 45, so we make it -90. And there we go. Now there's something going on here, which is that this mullion is not in the right place, and it's not like you could, for example, drag it to reposition it. And the reason is if you try to do that, then that'll mess up something else. For example, do you see how far the curtain wall needs to go? It needs to be up to here. So if we try to drag one mullion to reposition it, then that'll mess up the other mullions. So that's a complicated path to take, and it might just make things worse. Now, one thing we did in this project is that we went over here and removed the mullions for this part. Alright, so the mullions were removed. And in other words, we no longer had any of them. We have removed the corner mullions by right-clicking, select mullion, then on grid line, then unpin and delete. Now the next thing we did was that for this corner over here, we did some extrusion. As in, we went over here to model in place. And for example, we selected a generic model, and then we also named it something like corner mullion. So we drew an extruded item, we used pick line, and then we selected or picked the lines, and then we used extrusion. Let me select or pick the other lines as well, and then I'm going to continue. So this one needs to go over here, and this line right here is extra, as well as the one next to it. As for this line, it needs to be trimmed with this one, and this line is overlapping them, and this is what we've got. Now there seems to be a problem here, so I'm going to double check. I'll drag over the whole thing and see that 3 lines are selected. Now I'm going to select a smaller part and realize that the problem is around here. There seems to be 2 extra lines on this one line. There is also another issue somewhere else, and it's probably because we have 2 extra lines on here as well. And also here. Now let's see what this next error is for. And here it is. You see that line that we just picked another extra one with it. Okay, so this is what we have now. And now if I click on finish, then I will have something like a mullion in this view, for which you could very easily expand the box from any side. And along with that, you could increase the height of the mullion that you've just drawn. You could even stretch it all the way up till it covers all of the levels. So this is what we have done by far, which is that for all of the corner mullions, we created a generic model instead of doing something that messes the whole thing up. Alright, so you could just do something like that for your projects, because placing these mullions individually is a little bit complicated, and it'll just take a lot of your time. So you could just do what I did. After that, if you want to see these mullion details, you could just go ahead and use that detail item that you've made. as in I'm going to save this right now as corner mullion, also followed by detail. Then I'm going to load this into project, and then I'm going to place it over here. Basically, I will just be placing it on the mullion demonstration. Do you see what it looks like now? So this way you very easily also have your details. And now let's also try to align it, this line with this line, and this one with this one. So do you see how easy it is? This is something that you can do for your corner mullions. Now in drawing plans, we usually group all of them together, and just basically we do that for all of the two-dimensional items so that they don't get lost throughout the project and we could have easy access to them. For example, over here you have a corner mullion, another down here, one to the left, and basically you have 4 corner mullions. You could place them all first and then group them. That way you could very easily find and edit them whenever you need. Or you could even copy them into other levels. So grouping them would make things a lot easier. Okay, so we have another problem over here, which is that these need to be flipped. This needs to be up here instead. So in this case, you could very easily try to edit its family. You could go over here, and then like I said, you could flip it. You could just select it first and flip it by using mirror from here to here, and that's it. Then you're gonna load this into project, and then you can see that it's been flipped. Or you could also go to edit type and change its angle, which I don't really recommend. So by far we have drawn the curtain walls for one side of this view. We also said that we were going to be using generic models for this area, and we also need to adjust the height of the curtain walls, which we're going to discuss in a different chapter later on, and learn how we can adjust the heights by using details. So right over here I have a detail item and a generic model, which I could go over here and edit its family, and then try to copy it, copy multiple, and then I'm going to rotate the instances. For example, I'm going to flip this by using mirror. First I'm going to uncheck copy, then I'm going to mirror it, then I'm going to move it right over here. So there goes one of them. And now I'm going to select these two, and then first I'm going to mirror them both. And now let's go see where they are. They're right over here. And after that, I'm going to reposition these copied ones as well. We're going to use the move tool and place this one over here. And then I'm going to select this other one and also move it over to this corner. Alright, so now there go the corner mullions, and we could also try to assign the materials to them. And then we could take the detail item that we used for this area and use that for the other parts as well. But before that, we're going to have to also do another thing. We're going to first go into its family space, and then we're going to place that intersection on this point to make this item easier to place. So I'm going to change that point, and then I'm going to reload this into project, and that might result in a repositioning. So we're going to grab this corner and move it over here. Press the tab key and then click. And then we're going to create similar, then place the mullion for the other corners as well. You see when the intersection is on the right spot, that makes the placing of these mullions a lot easier. We have another one over here, so we're going to place that one. And then we also have the last one on this corner. So there we go. After that, I'm going to select these mullions I've just placed. Then I'm going to group them. Also, I'm going to name this group Corner Mullion. Preferably, we're going to also add the level they are in, so that in case they were different in the other levels, we could just duplicate this ground floor ones and then readjust the group for those other levels. So this way you have easier access to them. Let's also delete this one And if you would agree, we're going to go over to another side to draw its curtain walls as well. Now you see the distance in this area was 4 meters instead of 2. So I'm going to duplicate this type. And then I'm going to rename this to 4. And also add 4 for the spacing. And we are done. So now this thing right here has changed. We're going to have to change its type back to 200. Then double check one more time. Now you see for this area for which we're going to be placing the curtain walls and the mullions, we said that the spacing between each wall was 4 meters. So I'm going to go over here and begin from this corner. For example, from here. Then I'm going to go all the way down to this point right here. Alright, now it's also facing the wrong direction, so I'm going to press the space bar to rotate it. So if I try to move this down a little bit, as you can see there will be 2 of them, and we're going to remove the extra one later, but let's go double check the other ones to make sure that they are in the right positions. So let's start checking from up there, and this one is the corner, which doesn't really matter, only I'm going to have to move this up a little bit. And that'll reposition all the others into their right places. Now let's go take a look down. I'm going to also go over here and remove this, where there was an extra one. Then I'm going to take this one and move it down a little bit. And there we go. Now once again, I'm going to go over on this one and delete it. And then I'm going to replace it with that generic model. We also have its detail. Alright, now let's go down a little bit and see that the mullions over here are different. For example, if I measure from here to here, it'll say that the spacing is 1 meter. So I'm going to have to make a new type for the mullions of 1 meter spacing. So I'm going to make this 100 and the spacing 1. And now I'm going to start drawing. So that'll be starting from here all the way down to this corner. I'm going to also hit the space bar again, and then I'm going to have to readjust and reposition the items. So first I'm going to move this one down, and then all of them will be adjusted like this. Now I'm going to have to also adjust the spacing between them, and also we've got an extra one in some places. So now if I go over here and try to change the justification, then that might fix some things around here and we won't have to readjust them manually. And for example, you can see over here that it didn't work with center. It does work with beginning, but still the result is strange. We would still have to do some rectification to reposition them all perfectly in place. For example, I'm going to try to move this one all the way down and see if the others will move along. But you can see that from a certain point they don't anymore. So for now, let me just remove this extra mullion, and then I'm going to bring this one further down. And now you can see that everything looks organized. And also this one is extra, so we're going to delete it. So our items will look like this. But if you take a look up there, you can see that we still have some problems. For example, you can see that no matter how much we try to align this with the demonstration of the plan, for example, I'm going to move it up, and as you can see, that'll reposition the other ones. But while we're here, I'm going to measure a distance and see how long it is between these 2 points. There is about 5 centimeters of distance. So in this case, you could go over here and give the offset of 5 centimeters to your mullions. And once you do that, you can see the mullions have been repositioned into the right places. So in cases where you see that nothing else works, you could try changing the offset or the justification, or anything else that'll work for you and reposition your mullions into their correct places. So you see, we also have some curtain walls around here without anything else. So I'm going to duplicate this type. And for example, I'm going to add empty to the end of its name. But you could name it whatever else you want. And then I'm going to go over here to disable the grids and the mullions. And on second thought, I'm going to keep the grids on, just in case we might need them later. But still, we are going to keep the mullions disabled. Then I'm going to click OK. And then I'm going to start drawing from this point all the way to the right. And for example, we're going to stop over here. So it's going to be something like this. As for this side, it's actually pretty similar to the previous ones. You're just going to draw it the same way as we did before and make the readjustments that you need. Also, as for the detail items, you could just go into the group, and we're going to do the same thing for the detail items that we have created by using generic model for the mullions. Now I'm going to finish drawing the rest of the thing, and then we're going to check it out. Alright, so I have drawn all of this view's curtain walls. And as you can see, these are the curtain walls for this area. And then we also have curtain walls on this corner. And then here we didn't have any partitions. And then there's this area, which goes all the way up, and I have drawn all of them. So now we have learned how we can create mullions and how we can adjust the glasses on the curtain walls, and some other things. And we also said that if you find your mullions in the incorrect positions, you could just change your justification or even the offset. A lot of times, offset is the one that's going to work best and position the mullions correctly. We also made a generic model for the mullions in the corner, and then we also imported its details by using detail item, then loaded them into the family. And then we group the mullions, which means that now we have a separate group for each level. So that's it, and by the end I'm going to also show you all of the curtain walls that have been drawn for this project. And then later when we get to the views, we're going to also check the views for the curtain walls, and then we're going to match them with what we have over in the AutoCAD file. Alright friends, so as you can see over here, this is the finished result of all of the curtain walls being drawn.